It all started with another family camping trip. My brother Andy, my parents, my aunt Laura, my uncle Ben and I always planned an annual camping adventure in the nearby mountains. Every year we liked to go a little higher and a little further. We arrived and pitched our tent on a grassy plain. It was quite nice and quiet. It seemed unbelievable that we were only a few miles from city life. The only part I don't like about these trips is that there's no bathroom, so if you needed some quiet, you have to bring a shovel and hope you don't get bitten by poison ivy. It was getting dark and we had everything ready. The fire crackled in the bonfire. Suddenly I felt like peeing, so I told my mother I was going to the grove. "But don't go too far. Dinner's almost ready," my mother told me, and I nodded from afar. I went into the lush forest and did my things. Once I was done, I pulled up my pants and started back, but just as I was about to leave, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I turned my head, and in a pond a few meters away there was a girl. I was curious, so I decided to approach. She had long, messy black hair and 2 pigtails. She didn't look much older than me, maybe 13 or 14. She was wearing a torn pleated dress but no shoes. Her legs were covered in scratches. "Hey," I greeted her as I approached her. Little by little, she turned to me. She had black bangs that covered half her face. "My name is Reuben," I smiled at her. "What's yours?" A fog surrounded her. While she was silent, I could barely see the surrounding trees. I heard her whisper, "Lulu." "Lulu? It's weird, but it's a cute name. Where do you live, Lulu?" I looked around me. It was hard to see anything. Besides, it was almost night. "I can take you, if you want," she murmured while taking my hand. Her skin was smooth, even with the scratches, but she was very cold. I was paralyzed for a few seconds. I didn't know if I should go with her or not. I looked at her again. I got carried away and followed her. We went down a dirt path that was cluttered with dry leaves and fallen branches. At that moment, I only noticed her and not the fact that we were walking blindly in the fog. We arrived at an old abandoned 2-story house, where the fog was even thicker. We sat on the porch watching the darkness. "Aren't you afraid? You know, of living here by yourself in the woods?" She hugged her bruised knees and kept her eyes hidden. "Not really. Even with tall men, assassins, and 4-legged monsters, I'm never scared. No one visits me anyway," she explained softly. I was surprised by her answer. For a moment I thought she was crazy, but it seemed like she had been living there for quite some time. "But where are you from?" "From a faraway dark place. I don't really like the dark. Bad things happen there." She shivered for a moment and then fell silent. "Why are you covering your face?" I asked after feeling a chill. "I want to see you." "I don't like people seeing my face." Another eerie silence filled the air. Then I cleared my throat. "When do you think the fog will clear up?" "I'll have to get back to camp before my parents get worried." I looked at her and she stood up. Suddenly I felt something strange in her. A sad and demonic feeling overwhelmed me. "Are you hungry?" she asked, walking towards the door. "Yes." I stood up, ready to follow her into the house. Inside, everything was very well cared for. The windows were clean, and the couch seemed comfortable. There were lights on in the kitchen area. I sat on the sofa. She came into the room with a bowl of soup and a shiny silver spoon. She put it on my lap and went to get me a napkin. Then she disappeared up some stairs. I sat alone to eat my soup. It was sweet and warm and suited me. I ate, thinking about my parents. I'd been away for a long time, but we hadn't gotten too far from the camp. I should hear my parents screaming my name. I should be able to hear from here, although everything became weird since the mist appeared. I was full after eating the soup and immediately fell asleep. I put the plate and spoon on the table and lay down on the sofa. I could only think about the girl. Where had she been? I fell asleep. I woke up in the dead of night to a loud scream coming from the basement. I got up from the sofa and looked around me. Only the creaking of the wooden boards could be heard. I looked at the table, but the plates were gone. I guess Lulu took them. I closed my eyes again. I was very sleepy. I was almost asleep when suddenly I was startled again by a scream. This time I was sure it wasn't my imagination. What if Lulu was in danger? I needed to make sure she was okay. I couldn't bear that something bad had happened to her. So I started looking around the house for the basement. When I grabbed the doorknob, an eerie coldness slowly ran through my body. I didn't want to open, but I steeled myself. Behind the door it was dark. I had to go down a staircase. I covered my nose. A fetid smell invaded me. As I went down, the bad smell was getting stronger. My stomach began to churn and my eyes watered. It smelled rotten. I found a switch and flipped it. The basement was now fully lit. In the corner of the room was another door covered in mold. "Lulu!" I yelled around me. There was no answer. Where could she be? "Lulu!" I screamed louder, more eagerly than before. I grabbed the doorknob on the corner door and pulled it open. Lulu? What I had seen in that room made me throw up. There was a whole room of bodies, rotting, decomposing bodies. There were men and women lying on the ground. They all had in common that none of them had eyes. There were only empty sockets looking through me. I couldn't stand it. I turned around and there was Lulu, her legs and arms covered in blood. I was horrified. I wanted all this to be a nightmare, that nothing was real. You've seen too much. She looked at me, her hair tossing to reveal her face. She had no eyes. Your face! I quickly backed away and tripped over some tools that were lying on the ground. She touched my face gently with her hand. You can't see my eyes right now, she said with a small smile. But I have them. I froze. My heart was beating intensely. I could hardly breathe. Lulu brushed all her hair away from her face, staining it with the blood from her hands. You see? The skin around the sockets began to tear and bleed. She seemed so sad, so hurt. Now that you've seen it, she reached her hand out to me and I smacked her. Get away from me! Don't touch me! I pushed her away and clumsily ran down the dark stairs. She followed me. You've seen too much, she repeated as she followed me. Give me your eyes. I looked back. She was standing on the porch. I kept running until I tripped over a branch and fell down a small hill. I hit my arm against a rock and screamed in pain. She appeared in front of me, put her hands a few inches from my face. I kicked her and ran away. She kept yelling for me to give her my eyes and she ran after me. Blood gushing from the small opening in my arm. That's when I realized that we were back at the pond where I'd first seen her. That meant my parents weren't too far away. I ran fast until I reached the camp. My family was shocked. I was dizzy and tired. I saw my mother. She looked so worried. The mist was gone. I was safe now. I fainted. I woke up in a hospital with my mother at my bedside. My arm was in a plaster cast. She leaned down to kiss me on the forehead. I'm so glad you're okay. You left for 5 minutes to go to the bathroom and came back with a broken arm and a bruise. Can you explain what you were doing? 5 minutes? Just 5 minutes? I was only gone for 5 minutes? But the girl, the mist, the house, and the bodies. Had it been a dream? Honey, what are you talking about, son? There's no house in the area, and there was no fog on the mountain yesterday. I was sure I had seen the mist and the girl. She had touched my hand, fed me, and the bodies. What was happening to me? I was discharged from the hospital and we went home at last. At night, the fog lifted, but it didn't seem strange to me. It was normal in the area. I set the alarm clock, went to bed, and closed my eyes. The house was in silence. The image of the girl was clear in my mind. I took a deep breath when I heard a creepy whisper. Give me your eyes.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. And if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you on the next episode.